Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into the real and honestly kind of messy origin story of Netflix. And I mean the real story, told by its co-founder and first CEO, Marc Randolph. So whatever you think you know, you might want to forget it.
So, let me ask you this. How do you picture a company like Netflix starting? You probably imagine some kind of eureka moment, right? A flash of genius. But what if the truth is a lot more chaotic and, frankly, a lot more interesting than that?
Because the truth is, the idea for Netflix wasn't born in a fancy boardroom. Nope. It was hammered out during a daily carpool commute between two guys, Marc Randolph and Reed Hastings. They were just pitching hundreds of ideas at each other, and you know what? Most of them were just terrible.
And that right there brings us to probably the single most important lesson from their entire story. The best ideas, well, they aren't born in a flash of genius. They're built, one piece at a time.
Randolph's core message is really simple. You have to distrust those flash of genius stories. His whole point is that real innovation almost never comes from a single magical moment. It's usually the messy result of endless conversations, debates, and just plain old perseverance.
So, okay, if it wasn't a sudden epiphany, what did it actually look like? Well, it turns out the road to one great idea is paved with literally hundreds of bad ones.
For instance, Randolph pitched this e-commerce idea for personalized baseball bats. You'd go online, you'd punch in your specs, and a custom bat would show up at your door. His partner, Reed Hastings, who's super analytical, shot it down almost immediately. Too niche, way too complicated.
All right, what about this one? Custom-made shampoo delivered right to your house. You know, another pretty creative e-commerce idea. But again, it just didn't have that billion-dollar business feel. They even talked about a rental system for VHS tapes by mail, which, okay, is getting pretty close. But the problem was just simple physics. VHS tapes were big, heavy, and really expensive to ship. The numbers just didn't add up.
Now, it's really important to get the why behind all this relentless brainstorming. For Randolph, it was personal. He grew up watching his dad build things in his workshop, and he was really inspired by his great-uncle, the PR pioneer Edward Bernays. He didn't just want a good idea, he had this deep-down need to actually build something.
So, after this whole graveyard of bad ideas, the story takes a really sharp turn. This is the moment where two totally separate things collide and create the spark that would eventually become Netflix. The first piece of the puzzle was this brand new technology that came out in the spring of 1997, the DVD. It was super thin, light, durable, and, this is the key part, it was incredibly cheap to mail compared to a clunky old VHS tape. The second piece, it was a personal frustration. I think we've all been there. Reed Hastings got hit with a massive $40 late fee for a movie rental. And that annoying, super common experience got them thinking, there has to be a better way than the old video store model.
And here's the absolutely brilliant part. They didn't write some 50-page business plan or build a bunch of complicated spreadsheets. They ran a dead simple real-world test. They went out, bought a music CD, same size and weight as a DVD, stuck it in an envelope, and mailed it across town. And right here, this is the core lesson of the whole story. The next day, the CD showed up, completely unharmed. For the price of a single stamp, they had just proved their entire business concept could actually work.
That one simple test was the catalyst. It just lit a fire under them. What had started as just another carpool chat in early '97 suddenly rocketed forward after that successful CD test in the summer, leading them straight to the launch of Netflix.com less than a year later.
Okay, so they had an idea that worked, but as we all know, an idea is nothing without a team to actually make it happen. The next big challenge was getting the right group of people together to bring this thing to life. And they started small. The very first members of the band, as Randolph liked to call him, were colleagues named Christina and Teo. They would hold these late-night brainstorming sessions at a local diner called Hobie's, just hashing out every single detail of this new company.
From the very beginning, they knew they weren't just hiring people to fill jobs. They were building a culture. They needed a team that was willing to just jump into the deep end, tackle the unknown, and build this incredibly complex machine from scratch, all fueled by creativity and a shared purpose.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does it really mean when you hear somebody say, "Oh, that will never work"?
Well, the Netflix playbook is actually pretty simple. Their success came from a relentless process, not from one perfect idea. They just understood that great ideas are built, not born. They trusted cheap, simple experiments over some grand theory. And they learned that when someone says, "that will never work,"
That isn't a dead end. It's an invitation.
Ultimately, the story of Netflix is just this powerful reminder that every huge success you see out there started with a small, simple, and probably uncertain first step. So it leaves us with a question to think about. What's your mail a CD test? What's that one tiny experiment you could run for that crazy idea you've been kicking around?